What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode number 788 of Underground Sports Philadelphia, presented by the city of Vineland. It's your boy KB coming at you solo dolo because Harrison is gearing up for his birthday-long trip to Indiana. So I'll be flying solo for part of the show, but we do have a very fun first guest appearance that I teased on Monday's episode. Erin Grugan of Liberty Ballers, my good friend, will be joining us later on in the show to preview the Sixers season. And yes, I know I'm recording this on Wednesday, and the Sixers season opens on Wednesday. I totally understand that. But it's okay because we do a full season preview. One game is not going to change that. But I'm also going to talk about the Sixers home opener win on the tail end of the show. We will also talk about our Philadelphia Eagles as they gear up for a rematch with the New York Football Giants. And this time around, guess who's back in the building as a player? Brandon Graham is back for year 16. We'll talk about BG's return and a whole lot more. But before we get into everything, make sure you guys are following us on the socials at Underground PHI across the board. We're on every social platform. You can follow Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. We're on everything. Follow us there. You can also follow me on Twitter at KBIZZL311, KBIZZLE11 on Instagram and Threads. Subscribe to the pod, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. Leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way for helping this show continue to grow, reach new audiences, and really help us continue to take this thing to the moon. So keep subscribing on Apple and Spotify. Wherever you get your podcasts, leave those 5-star reviews. And, of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia. That is where you get full video episodes of this show twice a week, full video episodes of every show on our network, clips, shorts, live streams, original video content. It is all on our YouTube channel. We are at 1,112 subscribers, which means we are just simply 88 subscribers away from our next 100 subscriber milestone. So keep subscribing on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia. Leave a like on the video, drop a comment in the comment section, and click that bell icon so you know whenever new videos go live. And guys, this show is proudly presented by the city of Vineland. And like I've been mentioning for a while, it's coming up quicker than you'd think. The Garden State Comic Fest is coming to the new Vineland Convention Center Saturday, November 15th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday, November 16th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Meet Melissa Joan Hart, yes, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, plus fan favorite stars like Dan Parent, the legendary Archie's comic artist and writer, Kevin Clash, the voice of Elmo, Splinter, and Baby Sinclair, and Keith Williams, the iconic comic book inker from Marvel. And recently announced Philadelphia Eagles legend Vince Papale will be at the Garden State Comic Fest. Comics, cosplays, collectibles, and over 6,000 fans. Visit gscfvineland.com for all the details. Again, the Garden State Comic Fest is coming to the new Vineland Convention Center Saturday, November 15th and Sunday, November 16th. For all the details, visit gscfvineland.com. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast.
Hello, I'm Mayor Anthony Fanucci. Vineland, New Jersey offers both a great business location and an outstanding quality of life. But don't just take my word for it. The experts agree. We're proud to be recognized as a premier food processing and logistics hub, one of New Jersey's most affordable and desirable cities, and one of the best places to retire in the country. Visit ViolentCity.org and see how our resources can work for you. Violent, New Jersey, where it's always growing season.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we will kick things off with our Philadelphia Eagles. Simply because the biggest news of the week in Philly sports is that one of the greatest to ever do it in our city is back. Brandon Graham announced he is coming out of retirement, and the rumor was true that circulated around on Sunday from multiple entities, and it's fact. Brandon Graham, year 16 on the horizon. He full send announced it on his podcast that he does with PHLY, BG Unblocked, with Bo Wolf, and a lot of the breakdown of him talking about coming out of retirement was initially he didn't want to retire in the first place. He said it just kind of felt like that's what had to be done. You know, the storybook ending of year 15, always saying he wanted to play 15 years in the NFL and going out as a champion and coming back from the injury to play in the Super Bowl to go out as a champion. And he said he really never wanted to retire in the first place. And here we are halfway through the season, and Brandon Graham is back in Midnight Green. And in this week, he'll be back in Kelly Green. He did say, we'll see how this week goes, but it's not a guarantee he's going to suit up this weekend against the Giants. But obviously the Eagles have a bye after the game against the Giants, so it's looking a lot more like the Monday night game against the Packers will be Brandon Graham's return to the football field with the Philadelphia Eagles. And here's the thing. A lot of people were torn about BG coming back simply for ruining the legacy, this, that, and the third. And, you know, I had those thoughts initially. I'm not going to lie. You know, I didn't want Brandon Graham to come out of retirement simply because he felt he had to. I wanted him to do it if he thought this was what he wanted to do. Like, if this was something he was aspiring to do, you know, and wanted to be back on the field and make sure that, you know, he left it all out there. And he went on to say that with Bo Wolf, you know, you only get so long to do this, and you want to make sure that you leave it all out there. And BG said he still felt like he had more to give. And I think knowing that and knowing BG is in a good spot, you know, personally, and where he is, you know, a couple of months now removed from the regular season starting and still having that itch to want to go and play is a good sign. And it's not that he's doing it really for himself either. Like, yes, he is, but the Eagles aren't like forcing this either. They truly need Brandon Graham. It's not that they're trying to add to the legacy. They need Brandon Graham. So Darius Smith retired abruptly. Josh Sweat left in free agency, and the Nolan Smith being out is a huge catalyst of this too. The Eagles need an edge rusher. They have been abysmal getting after the quarterback off the edge. And, you know, this past week against Minnesota, Josh Uche just got his first sack of the season, and I think Josh is a great player, but he's a guy that is a rotational player. He's not an every down type of player right now in the scheme that the Eagles are running, in my opinion. So you need somebody who can come in and kind of create a spark and give guys the belief that they can go out and make plays. And who better than an Eagles franchise legend in Brandon Graham? And, you know, I was talking to CFO Margie about this. It's going to be weird seeing Brandon Graham back on the Eagles, you know, in an Eagles game with a jersey on, that 55 back out there, but no captain's patch. Simply because he's coming in after captains were announced. You know, BG wasn't here for the beginning of the season, so it's going to be very weird to see that for sure. But we all know, like, BG is the type of leader that he doesn't need the captain patch on his jersey to know that he has the respect and, you know, the command in the room and the leadership qualities that he is a captain at the end of the day. So there's no need to, you know, worry on that front for sure. But Brandon Graham being back is very exciting. I think it's going to give this defense a spark. I think it's going to give the offense a spark. I talked about this on Monday's show where the Eagles don't really have that player right now on the roster that brings the veteran leadership. You know, on the defensive side of the ball, it's Zach Bond is the oldest Eagle on the defense. And with that being the case, it's one of those things where you now have a veteran presence on the defense again. You have, and not saying Zach Bond's a bad leader. You know, he's 28 years old. You know, BG coming in for year 16 of his NFL career. There's a lot that you learn. You know, remember Brandon Graham at 28 versus Zach Bond. You know, Brandon Graham at 28 is about 10 years ago. That is, you know, year one of Doug Peterson, if I'm doing my math correctly. You know, BG's 37. So, like, that's like tail end of Chip Kelly, where we didn't know what BG's career was going to be. And then year one of Doug Peterson. That's a big difference from where BG, trajectory-wise, ended up going and becoming this franchise legend. That was pre-Super Bowl 52. That is, you know, pre-Super Bowl 57. That is pre-last season, obviously. But I'm very excited to have Brandon Graham back in an Eagles uniform. And I just, you know, he will forever remain one of my white whale interviews. BG is somebody I have admired for a long time. You know, we talked about it when he retired on the show, and just his resiliency to never quit and stuck with it even when times got tough here in Philadelphia from the beginning. You know, nobody wanting BG. They all wanted Earl Thomas, and to go on and have the career that he's had to this point is nothing shy of one of the greatest success stories in Philadelphia sports history. And I genuinely think it makes him, you know, and I don't think we discussed this when he retired, but even now coming out of retirement, like year 16, not many players, if any, have played 16 years for one franchise in any sport, let alone football. Simply because it's difficult to play 16 years unless you're a kicker, you know, or a punter. Brandon Graham has the case, and I should put this out as a poll this week on Twitter. Brandon Graham has the case to be recognized as the greatest Eagle of all time. 2 Super Bowl championships, first-round pick that was dubbed a bust and turned into an absolute legend on and off the field, is highly ranked, you know, in statistical categories throughout, you know, the organization. I think he's 3rd all-time in sacks, 2nd all-time in sacks. Let me pull that up, actually. Eagles all-time sack leaders. Let's see. Did BG pass Trent Cole? Not yet. So BG is 3rd all-time. He is behind Trent Cole by 9 sacks, which if he ends up with 9 sacks this year, good grief. But BG 3rd all-time in sacks. He is a 2-time Super Bowl champion, has the most iconic play in franchise history, you know, sacking Tom Brady in the Super Bowl to inevitably pave the path to winning that Super Bowl. I genuinely think, like, when you talk about all-time Eagles, when you talk about, you know, the guys like Reggie White and Jerome Brown and Randall Cunningham and Chuck Bednarik and Brian Dawkins and Jason Kelsey, and, you know, the list goes on and on. Brandon Graham, I think, undoubtedly has to be at least in your top 5. At least. And if you go Mount Rushmore, I'm not arguing anyone that puts Brandon Graham on that list. But at least top 5. And like, even just thinking off the top of my head right now, like, no order, it's Brian Dawkins, it's Brandon Graham, it's Reggie White, probably Chuck Bednarik, even though I never saw him play, and I know a lot of people will say Donovan McNabb. I respect what Donovan did. I genuinely think Jalen Hurts is, like, making his case. I'm not putting him there just yet, simply because the book is still being written. But Brandon Graham, he's got to be in your top 5, no matter who you are. No matter who you are, he's got to be in your top 5. He's that iconic of a player. But BG is back, and it's going to be exciting, to have BG mic'd up again. The trash talking is back, and I'm very excited to see where things go, with his return and what it means for the defense, what it means for the trade deadline, what it means for so much. But I'm excited to be able to root for Brandon Graham, at least for one more season, in an Eagles uniform. So welcome back, BG. I'm very excited, and you are always welcome on Underground Sports Philadelphia. I'll tell you that much. Before I keep it pushing, tip of the cap here to Brandon Graham. The tip of the cap, everyone, as you know, is brought to you by our good pals over at 47. Guys, you already know, I'm wearing 47 all the time. This hat right here, 47, that I'm rocking if you're watching on YouTube. I'm wearing 47 literally every day of the week. Their headwear is truly the best in the game. They are officially, they are unofficially the official headwear partner of Underground Sports Philadelphia. One day that will be the moniker, but we're pumped to always be partnered up with 47. They have the best gear in the game for the sports fan in your life. Before you know it, the holidays are going to be here. Gear up. Get your Birds gear. Get stuff for the Phils, the Sixers, the Flyers. Rep your favorite WNBA team. They've got stuff for soccer, NASCAR, the whole lot. Use our link in the description to shop with 47. That way they know you're coming from us. And then when you join the 47 family, it's free to join. It is their rewards program. Every purchase you make, you earn points that can go towards getting discounts or free gear. Who doesn't love free? And when you join the 47 family, you get free shipping on all orders. So use our link in the description, join the 47 family, and get free shipping on all orders from our friends at 47. And we thank 47 for being a proud partner of Underground Sports Philadelphia. Eagles Giants upcoming this weekend. This time in Philadelphia. This time in Kelly Green for the first time this season. This is a big game for the Eagles. Obviously, you're not all that far removed from getting your teeth kicked in against this very Giants team, against Jackson Dart, against Cam Scatterbo. But I think at that point, you go back and look at the semantics of that Thursday night game. You're on a short week, off a loss to the Broncos in a game that you should have won, and your defense was ravaged. Quinyon Mitchell did not play in that, or got hurt in that game. Jalen Carter was out in that game. You still did not, have a fully back Nakobe Dean. Yes, he was back, but it was his first game back. You're playing on that god-awful MetLife turf, and I'm not making excuses there, but it was a formula for disaster, pretty much. And I think the Eagles came in with not the wrong mindset, but just they looked unprepared for what the Giants were going to be able to throw at them. And the Giants were playing with house money. They're playing a rookie quarterback, rookie running back. No Malik Neighbors because he got injured the week before. But now I think the Vikings game helped reset a lot. I think you know what you're capable of in a lot of facets on offense, and the defense will benefit from that. I think, if you're able to sustain drives on offense against this Giants defense, which is the strength of their team, quite frankly, especially that front seven, you're going to need your offensive line to show that they're bad. And that's going to be such a key to this game, is the Eagles' offensive line showcasing that they are capable of being back and, being able to not only defend Jalen Hurts, but be able to, run block and open up lanes for Saquon Barkley and give Saquon an opportunity to have his first big game of the season. I think the Eagles are in a good spot, here. And while I said going into that Thursday game, that was a game that they should have won by double digits coming off of a loss, this is a game this is a can't lose game for the Eagles. You can't get swept by the Giants this year. The Cowboys are probably the second best team in the division, if I had to put a pin on it, especially with Jaden Daniels being out for Washington right now. They're all types of a mess on defense. They're injured all over the place on offense, and the decline of the Commanders was one of the most inevitable things we could have ever predicted. The Cowboys offensively are what's going to keep them alive all season long, but their defense is atrocious. So the Eagles just have to do their part and continue building within the division, continue stacking wins as the season progresses, so that when that game down in Jerry World happens and the Eagles go full heel and wear Kelly Green in the faces of absolute morons down in Dallas and wipe the floor with them, you have the overall tiebreaker against the Cowboys. You have a strong, commanding lead in the NFC East, and that all starts this week. That all starts with getting another division win under your belt, improving to 2-1 in the division, getting another NFC win. That's what matters at the end of the day. And, you look at the NFC standings. Yes, the Packers are in first place by virtue of that tie. But the Eagles are right there with every team that is, competing in the NFC. You look at the NFC standings, it's Packers, 49ers, Eagles. Huge tiebreakers the Eagles have over Tampa Bay and Los Angeles in the Rams. You still have to play Detroit later this year, so you could earn another tiebreaker there. Detroit looks fantastic. Tampa Bay is now banged up with Mike Evans being out for a majority of the rest of the season. Seattle is still very legit. Chicago is very legit right now. Carolina are frisky. And Dallas is 3-1 with a very explosive offense. The Falcons have a very explosive offense if things all click for them. And obviously you beat Minnesota, but they have the ability to be a pretty, formidable opponent and be a sneaky team that can make their way into the playoffs right now. But you look at the playoff picture right now in the NFC, it's Packers, 49ers, Eagles, Tampa Bay, Detroit, Seattle, Los Angeles. All of those teams are 5-2, with the exception of the Packers being 4-1-1. The NFC is loaded, and it is, quite frankly, the best conference in football, and the AFC doesn't even come close. And that has been the case for quite some time now. Everyone talks about the AFC being this juggernaut conference because you have, Lamar Jackson, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Josh Allen, you have Justin Herbert. You have guys at the quarterback position that can make noise. Joe Burrow when he is healthy, obviously. CJ Stroud. you look at it now, Drake May is making noise. Daniel Jones is looking like an MVP candidate. Bo Nix is slinging the rock. Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence. But when you look at the AFC, it's just they have very good to elite quarterbacks. There's not many very good to elite teams in the AFC. Right now, the Colts look like a very complete team. The Patriots are playing good football. I don't know if their defense is all that legit yet, but they're playing good football. The Broncos, I think they're a little sus. The Steelers, we'll see what they end up looking like as the season progresses. The Bills, the Chargers look fraudulent. The Jaguars have kind of taken a little fall off. The Chiefs are surging again. The Bengals are hanging on by a thread thanks to Joe Flacco. And then everything kind of dissipates, and the Ravens are in shambles because Lamar Jackson is hurt and their defense is bad. The NFC, Packers, very complete team. 49ers look like they're back to being legit, even with Mac Jones at quarterback, who is better than Brock Purdy, by the way. The Eagles are obviously contenders and the defending Super Bowl champions. The Buccaneers, when fully healthy, very good team. Detroit, very good team. Seattle looks very legit on both sides of the ball. Los Angeles Rams, very good team. Chicago is surging and playing great defense right now. Carolina has been frisky and has been able to sneak out some wins here and there. Dallas has a great offense. The Atlanta Falcons have a very good offense. Minnesota came into last week as the number one passing defense. That is 12 teams in the NFC that are like legit. And I haven't even brought up the Commanders simply because they have like kind of been falling off a bit. And then it's the Cardinals, Giants, and Saints, who I think are the three teams that kind of throw them to the side. They're not really in that conversation, but I think potentially 13 teams, at least 12, are very legit teams in the NFC through 7 weeks of the season. And that's why the Eagles have to continue stacking these wins against inferior opponents. That's why you have to continue getting wins against your division and improving in the division and just kind of putting a nail in the coffin of this Giants season and throwing them to the wayside. The Jackson Dart Cam Scattaboo storyline was cute. It was fun. The Eagles got to assert their dominance and kind of put that shit to rest. Plain and simple. You got to put a kibosh on that. It's been fun. It's been adorable. But it's time to silence that shit because it got old real quick, in my opinion. And then you go into the bye. If the Eagles can go into the bye 6-2, I'll feel great. Because guess what? I think a lot of people, when the season didn't even start yet, when the schedule came out and looked at the schedule, a lot of people had this team at 6-2 at this point in the year. Okay? Probably not in the games that we lost. I think a lot of people had them losing to the Chiefs. They had them losing to the Rams. They had them losing to Tampa Bay. Stuff like that. But at the end of the day, 6-2, no matter how you get there, 6-2. And one of the losses is an AFC loss, which is not as bad as losing, games in the NFC. You have immaculate tiebreakers, like I mentioned. And then you come out of the bye, and I think that's when the real true gauntlet starts. We had that early season run for sure, but then you're at Green Bay, home to Detroit, at Dallas, home to the Bears, and then you're at the Chargers. That's a big stretch. That's another gauntlet of your season in a 5-game pack right there. Before you get the Raiders at home, you're at Washington, at Buffalo, home to Washington. There is there's going to be a lot to assess after the bye. But I think the biggest thing is getting this win at 1 o'clock on Sunday against the Giants at Lincoln Financial Field. And just giving a lot of people some silence and quieting a lot of the critics. And, people will talk, obviously. People are always going to find ways to just talk shit, ways to try to lessen what this team is. And the Eagles always find great ways to silence them. And I think they'll continue to do that this week against the Giants. I want to see the passing game continue to look the way it did against the Vikings, against an inferior passing defense who allowed 33 points in the fourth quarter to the Denver Broncos. And I want to see the run game. I want to see the run game develop a lot more than it truly has this year. And I just want to see the defense continue to shine and, be a core part of what this team does and being the identity of this team. A lot of people obviously look at Jalen Hurts and look at the offense and the talent there. This team has a defensive mindset within it, and that's why I think they're so successful. They can be an offensive team. They can be a defensive team. And I think that's what separates the good from the great in the NFL is when your identity is just your team. It's your roster. It's not one side of the football. And that's why the Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champions. That is why they are 5-2 right now through 7 weeks of the season. That's why they have an opportunity to go into their bye at 6-2. Okay? There's a lot to be excited about. The Kelly Greens are going to look fantastic. And I'm just looking forward to a good old-fashioned Eagles beatdown of the New York Giants. Kind of throw that Thursday night game to the wayside and put on a show for your fans at home in those vintage Kelly Greens. That's all they got to do, and you'll have people buzzing. So, yeah, it should be a good game. I'm excited. Looking for more from my guy, Jalix Hunt. Looking for more Ojomo to continue making me look like a genius. And I think this team is also going to make some noise at the trade deadline, but that remains to be seen. We'll have the whole bye week to dissect that because it's convenient that the Eagles have their bye, during trade deadline week. Gives Howie a little bit more time to sit back and take it all in. But nonetheless, Eagles-Giants, 1 o'clock on Fox is going to be a doozy of a game for sure. And I hope the Eagles just go belt to ass on them. But nonetheless, our Eagles-Giants preview brought to you by our awesome merch partners at PHI Apparel Company, guys. There's no better way to stand out in the crowd, whether you're going to the link for the Birds game, heading over to your favorite local watering hole, you're going to Xfinity Mobile Arena to watch the Sixers, the Flyers, the Wings coming back up pretty soon, or going down to the Soob for Philadelphia Union playoffs that are also happening on Sunday, which we will talk about. There's no better way to rep your favorite teams or your favorite Philly sports podcast than with PHI Apparel Company, because there's no doubt in our minds you will stand out in the crowd with their unique designs for all. Use our link in the description or go to phiapparel.co, and when you go to checkout, use code UNDERGROUND and you'll get 10% off your next merch order from our awesome pals at PHI Apparel Company. Again, that's phiapparel.co, code UNDERGROUND at checkout to get a generous 10% off your next merch order and stand out in the crowd with the official merch partner of Underground Sports Philadelphia. The Sixers are back. We're switching from the gridiron to the hardwood. And I think there's no better way to get into a Sixers season than with somebody who knows basketball better than a lot of people I know. Her expertise is second to none. And quite frankly, I need someone to help pull me out of the dunker spot comatose state that I've been in since 2021. And that is my good friend Erin Grugan from Liberty Ballers. Erin and I recorded earlier this week to preview what's to come for this Sixers team, what we can expect from certain players, the expectations for the season for Joel Embiid, for Paul George, for a lot of the young stars, VJ Edgecombe, Jared McCain, Adem Bona, the whole lot, okay? Tyrese Maxey's growth. We talked for a good long time about this team, and it's the longest I've talked about the Sixers in a good long time, probably since before Matt exited the podcast. Was the last time we really had in-depth Sixers talk on this show before now. But I'm very excited for you guys to hear the conversation with me and Erin talking about the Sixers, and that is brought to you by our friends over at FOCO. Guys, there's no better way to gear up for the Sixers season with our friends at FOCO. You want to rep the Philadelphia 76ers in the best way possible. FOCO is the place to do it. They are the leaders in officially licensed fan gear, Forever Collectibles. They've got their Bobble Bash going on right now, up to 60% off in-stock bobbleheads. And I mean, there's genuinely no better way to gear up for the NBA season than with our friends at FOCO. I'm pulling up their website right now to see all the new stuff they have in stock for the Sixers. They've got so much. I got to get this Sixers team known. They got the Sixers overalls on sale right now. Hello? Might have to cop one of those. That's a fun-looking thing right there. Okay, they've got everything you could need to gear up for the Sixers season. So use our link in the description. Shop with our friends at FOCO. And, yeah, I'm going to have to get these Sixers overalls. Because if I'm going to plan on going to any games, I'm gonna have to be looking right. And that might be the way to do it, is the Sixers overalls for sure. So use our link in the description. Shop with our friends at FOCO. Gear up for the Sixers season and rep the basketball team here in our city the best way possible. And that's with our friends at FOCO. And we thank FOCO for being a proud partner here at Underground Sports Philadelphia. And ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I'm going to kick it to myself and Liberty Ballers' own Erin Grugan as we preview the 76ers 2025-2026 season. So sit tight. We'll be right back on the other side to recap opening night. And we'll talk a little Union as well to round out the show. But here is Erin Grugan.
The Vineland Municipal Utilities is committed to helping your business succeed. As a community-owned utility, our focus is on service, not profit. From site planning to powering your operations, we can help you achieve your strategic goals. Whether it's a customized cost analysis of your usage needs, engineering support to ensure a smooth interconnection, or offering lower rates than neighboring utilities, we want to be your partner in creating an environment for long-term success. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season.
All right, everybody, we are back with another special segment here on Underground Sports Philadelphia, and I'm thrilled to be having our next guest be joining us throughout the 2025-2026 76ers season, and we're going to see if she can pull my soul from the depths of 2021 dunker spot comatose. The one and only from Liberty Ballers, the MLOT on film queen herself, Erin Grugan joins the show for the first time. Erin, I'm stoked about this. Happy to have you on. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording. We're going to see what direction this basketball team takes us this season.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting a lot of pressure on me saying it's up to me to pull you out of the depths. Trust me and everybody else that covers the team or watches the team or the team itself, honestly, I think really felt the depths last year. I mean, you could see it on the players' faces. You could see it. It became extremely hard to write about, So hopefully we can only go up from there.
See, the benefit of what we do on the show covering every team is when the Sixers were just so ungodly bad last year, I just didn't talk about them, and it was the most therapeutic thing ever. Unfortunately for you, that is your job. So you'll be able to guide me a little bit better because genuinely last year was so painful. I couldn't even like stomach to bring myself to watch. I think I ended up watching like 3 games last year. And
Yeah.
it was just one of those things where I had to do it so that I didn't lose my mind like I did in 2021 when Ben Simmons passed up the dunk, and that's kind of where my basketball soul was left to die. And then we've had some fun moments along the way, but at a point you get to where I think a lot of people get confused and try to compare our beloved Phillies to this basketball team.
Yeah.
The difference is this basketball team still hasn't gotten out of the second round in this era of basketball, and we're still searching for that. And I genuinely feel like the optimist in me, as we are, upon a new season here, the East is just so wide open simply because now every other team is injured except for the Sixers. Knock on every piece of wood known
I was
to man.
about to just say knock wood before you even finish your sentence.
But it feels like the East is more wide open than it has been maybe in the last 5 years.
Oh, for sure. I think the Eastern Conference absolutely is, which is why I think as long as the Sixers do a little better than last year, they have more than a fair shot at making it at least into the play-in. Now, whether they get past that, I think is a little bit more, kind of shooting for the stars, should it be. But I think the expectations of the season should probably be adjusted. And Sixers fans, I think, know after last year, again, it was just such a tough season to even remotely stay engaged in because most people didn't even know who was on the team some nights if you weren't watching week to week because it got so bad that we were getting the hardship exception 10-day contracts coming in. I mean, we had a record-setting number of starting lineups last season. It was just, by the end of the year, it was really like, all right, how do we just get to the end of this and start over with the off season? Because it really felt like a lost season, really up until the draft when we picked VJ Edgecombe, and it started to feel like, all right, if we had to go through that, at least it looks like we're getting an absolute stud of a young player out of it with an amazing attitude. But yeah, you were, I would imagine, not the only one that was very checked out by midway towards the end of last season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that sets the expectation for this team for the first time in a long time with little to none, so that almost like this year feels like a free play year where anything that is remotely better than last year is almost a win in some ways. And I think a lot of people are going into this season where like, yeah, I have no expectation for this team because you don't know what you're going to get from Joel on a, night to night basis. You don't know how many games he's going to end up playing. And then a lot of that falls into, okay, what does Tyrese Maxey do to step up and kind of be the next face of this franchise? Like we all know he can be. And then there's a lot of reliance on guys like Jared McCain, VJ Edgecombe, and a lot of the young core on this team to really be, the guys to take that next step. But I think this year, like I said, it feels like a free play year almost because you don't know what to expect from this team.
I think that's a really good way to put it. A lot of people have been talking about the expectations of the team, and I know that sportsbooks have them set at about exactly 500. And I really think that the reasoning behind that decision is just what you said, where it's just it is kind of an extremely variable year, but in a good way. Like you talked about, more reliance on the youth of the team. Not that we weren't relying on Tyrese Maxey. Jared McCain, before he was injured, obviously was having a stellar rookie season. But the offense was still very clearly designed throughout the preseason to run through Joel Embiid and Paul George, which is understandable. You have two, multi all-star caliber players. You're going to plan to run through them. I think this offseason is a little different because it feels like there is an acceptance that is not a realistic way that this team is going to be able to be run, because when something happens, it turns into last year where it just completely falls apart. Whereas this season, obviously you want to see Joel Embiid out there, you want to see Paul George out there, but I think you're going to see a shift more in how the offense is run, and how reliant on those guys it is. It's going to be reliant on them when they're out there, but I think they are going to have a better backup plan for when one or both or the other is not able to go. And I think we didn't have that last year. I think it was really banking on the prayer that they would both be good and ready for the season. And obviously we know how that turned out. But yeah, I think the expectations, not to say set low, but to just set them for manageable, consistent basketball. Not something that relies completely on a guy that's not going to play every game for you. So I do think it's kind of a free gear in a sense where people have sort of adjusted their expectations. You don't see even the front office coming out saying, we expect to contend for a title this year. You didn't see that. And that's usually the go-to sort of phrasing. I think everybody is on a similar page where it's like, okay, we need to figure out how to play basketball consistently as the team, with the team we have and with the players that are likely to be available and the ones that maybe not so likely to be available every night.
And I think, last year too, from what I was taking in, just because it was such a volatile year and most of the headlines for the team were off the court, it almost felt like Nick Nurse was dealt like the worst hand possible, not only from everything on the court, but it felt very reminiscent of tail end of Brett Brown, of just shoving him to kind of be the human shield to the unbelievable chaos going on in the building. Like, I don't remember the last time before, media day and everything that we saw Daryl Morey's face. And to me, that's a problem when like you're the guy who's putting this puzzle together and we're not hearing from you at all. We're not even hearing from Elton Brand, who like Daryl could easily say, hey, Elton, go talk to the media. Like, you go do this. We didn't hear from anybody from the front office. I think that put an unimaginable amount of pressure on Nick Nurse during games, because he was like, what am I going to have to deal with after the games? What am I going to have to deal with, during the week? Because I don't know what's going to be thrown my way. From that point of view, how big of a year is it for Nick Nurse this year, simply from a coaching perspective?
Yeah, I completely agree where there was times during the year where you could tell Nick Nurse was fielding questions that he wasn't being given the answers to, or maybe questions that somebody else in the organization should have been fielding or should have been out there to take. And it only added to, like I said, that sort of feeling of it being like the lost year, for lack of a better term, because it was just like, it felt like from top to bottom, the energy, the enthusiasm, it's hard to be enthusiastic when you simply don't know what the direction is of the team. And that's what it felt like for a good bit of last year. And again, he had to put out, I think it was 54 was the final tally, first starting lineups. Not many coaches have to deal with that, especially when they think they're coming into, a franchise with, an MVP and a Tyrese Maxey and things like that. I think this is an extremely important year, not in so much like he's in the hot seat. I would be surprised, again, because I think he's been dealing with the hand he was dealt. But again, through watching the preseason, it feels like he is getting more of a grasp of, okay, I kind of understand what the situation is going to be here. We're a lot more realistic about it. I'm going to coach the players that are there to be ready to go out, whether, this was before Joel Embiid started practicing again and Paul George started practicing again. I think it's a huge year to see what he can actually do with, he had the reins, but hopefully a little bit more to work with than the starting lineup being a bench lineup, and then your bench lineup being guys that weren't on the team a week before. So I think it's a very big year to see what Nick Nurse can actually do with this group.
Like, it's almost crazy that the 9-win season felt more successful than last year did.
Oh, 100%. It's like I said, I think so much of it is about direction, where it's one thing to be a team that's rebuilding, quote unquote. It's another team that just doesn't have the talent right away. That one of the teams I actually didn't mind watching at the end of last year, because we were watching nothing but the tanking teams, was the Utah Jazz. And it was just because they're coached really well and they were battling every single game, and they knew they weren't playing for actual success. It was to develop some sort of sustainable basketball that maybe they could carry into the next season and build off of. It just didn't feel like we knew what the plan was, because you had, your main guys both hurt. You have Joel Embiid, Paul George both hurt. And this is even before Paul George gets his summer surgery. And then it just keeps falling apart. Jared McCain was out. He was the one bright spot, I think, keeping a lot of people interested towards the first half of the season. And then he gets hurt. There just wasn't a direction. It was kind of just like, all right, we just need to get to the end of this and start fresh in the off season. So it definitely was more of a slog, I think, even than going into that 9-win season where you're like, yeah, it's probably lucky they got 9. Like
100%. And I mean, looking at this, we brought up Tyrese Maxey and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we want to see him take yet another step forward at being, arguably a top 15 player in the NBA, because I think he's capable of that. What is your expectation for the leap that Maxey takes this year, and kind of what should that leap be, moving for, him going into this year and knowing what the circumstances of the team are, knowing that, you're not going to have Joel every night. You're not going to have Paul George every night on, some back-to-back type things early in the season, kind of getting used to playing in true game situations with VJ, with Jared McCain, full send again. What's your expectation for the leap that Maxey can take and the leap that he should take?
Yeah, I think it's funny because we still kind of consider Maxey this new player somewhat in our heads, because we're still in the Joel Embiid era. It all feels like one continuation, but he's gotten quite a couple of seasons under his belt and made a bunch of different leaps in his play. Before drafting VJ Edgecombe, I would have said I think the biggest thing would be to see him develop even more as a point guard with passing. His passing has always been good, but I think it could be a lot better. Obviously, part of that is the floor is not spaced very well when you're missing your 7-foot center. But now that we kind of have seen a little bit of VJ Edgecombe in preseason and exhibition games, he's showing a lot more potential, I think, as a point guard and a shooting guard than we really thought his passing would be before we saw him out there. He's had a number of really impressive, just smart basketball plays as point guard throughout the preseason, really good passing. And I think that actually kind of can affect how Maxey can go about this season, because one of the biggest issues he had last year was he could not shoot consistently at all. Now, towards the end of the year, he's dealing with a thumb, I think it was. So, but he had been struggling with consistency long before that. And I think it was a combination of him trying to do too much with too little space and not enough help. And I think this year he has a lot more help. And, we have a very crowded backcourt, which I think is not a bad thing to have. And I'm hoping that it opens him up to, let VJ split the point guard duties and let Maxey get into the groove shooting and hopefully not force so many shots, things like that. And I think that'll just come with, he's going to have a lot more help this year, hopefully, on that front. So I think he does have he has room to grow. That's the thing. I don't think you'll see some massive change in his game. His game, he's quick. Got great body control, great movement on the ball. But if he could start shooting a little bit more consistently, I think that could just be an absolute game changer for him.
And it seems like he's put on the muscle to play a little bit more physical this
Mhm.
year too, which I think is going to be so important for
Mhm.
just his inside game too. Like obviously you want to see him, continue to develop that shot and be able to kind of shoot all around the court. But if he can, work his way to the rack like we know he can, we've seen him do, but if he can do that more consistently with a little bit more mass on him, I think that's going to be such a game changer for this team too.
Absolutely, and I think it'll help his ability to finish at the rim, because I'm obviously a homer in this respect, but I don't think he gets the best whistle in the NBA. There's a lot of times that I think because he came into the league so small and fast and out of control with his body, that he's still officiated that way a little bit, where he has a lot more control over his body now. So if he's flying, he's probably it's probably because he is actually getting fouled, but he doesn't always get those calls, and you could tell he gets frustrated by it. So I think if he can use the size that he's put on over the last season and a half to finish at the rim and not have to be so reliant on the whistle too, it'll help his mental game as the game goes on, which I think everything builds off of. So,
and to kind of like replicate, talking about Maxey there, but Jared McCain obviously doesn't get a full rookie season because of his injury. What are you kind of expecting in this hybrid sophomore season for Jared McCain that will hopefully consist of a full season rather than just 20 games?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the most heartbreaking things about last season. I honestly think, if we have Jared McCain through the end of last season, it's still not going to be a success by any means, but I think it just helps keep the energy. You could tell he has an extremely good mentality and energy around the team that, that sort of thing spreads. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the teams in this city and about their energy level during certain things. The Phillies get criticized for it all the time, that passion level, the happiness level. And it's important. I know, like, people tend to forget that these are people on the court. And if they get frustrated and get down, it's only going to go downhill. And I think having Jared McCain around is just huge for this team. And then the talent factor that he has. I mean, he blew us all. We knew he was going to be good as a rookie. I don't think anybody knew how good he was going to be. And then to have it end like that. Again, we have a crowded backcourt, which I think is a great thing because it sets him up to lead that bench unit, I think, 100%, and have a chance to really solidify himself as a sixth man in the NBA, a very good one, which is huge because the bench unit for the Sixers, again, last year we kind of have to just wipe away, but the bench unit for the Sixers has traditionally been, oh God, okay, how do we survive until the starters get back out there? Whereas I think if you have a guy like him running the show for that bench lineup, it might be a lot more stable.
Right. The days of Ersan Ilyasova are long gone.
For sure.
Marco Bellinelli is not walking through that door. Speaking of the bench, who's kind of the veteran X factor, not named Joel Embiid, that you're looking to be not necessarily like, a guy that's going to carry this team, but someone who's going to be that perfect complement piece that, during a game in January, we're going to look back and it's going to be this player's game. We're going to remember that game. Who do you think is most equipped to kind of be that cog in the wheel for this team?
Yeah, I actually think if we're talking about in terms of like not necessarily carrying game to game, but having those nights where they absolutely pop off and carry the team, I think you look at Kelly Oubre Jr. He's such a solid role player. And when he doesn't try to do too much, he is absolutely at his best. And again, I think having more talent on the floor lets him fall into those roles where he can sit back and just start tacking on points and using his athleticism and his energy that we all know he has. And he has that potential to go for a bunch of points. It's funny you said the bench, because I think also veteran impact that you're going to see never on the court, and you might not see it as a fan, but I think the players will respond to it, is having Kyle Lowry and Andre Drummond. A lot of discussion about having all of those guys on the roster at once taking up spots, and I think it's completely valid because you don't want to see those guys play realistically. I don't think they signed Kyle Lowry for his 20th season because they want him to go out on the court. I think it was very much he was at every game, almost every game, if I remember correctly, last year, even towards the end, plain clothed while he was hurt, just coaching. I think that's going to be huge. You have Andre Drummond, who recently took a tire off of a Dembona's car and filled it with popcorn because he said he's still a rookie until the first game. And it's like, when was the last time you heard fun stories like that out of the Sixers lineup as a whole? I mean, it's been hard to be the good vibes team with the struggles they've had, and not that vibes translate to wins, but I don't think they hurt. So I think you have Andre Drummond teaching a Dembona, not a bad thing. You have Kyle Lowry teaching absolutely everybody at all times, but especially that backcourt, young backcourt that you have now. I think they have good veteran presence on and off the court for this upcoming season.
And I think Kyle Lowry being from Philly also helps the Maxeys, the McCains, VJ, kind of just continue to learn how to play in front of Sixers fans.
Absolutely. It's everybody has their opinions about Philly fans, and I think, they all come from somewhere, and that's fine. But yeah, having a guy like Kyle Lowry that not only has played here, but grew up here and clearly loves this city and clearly wanted to come here for what is very likely his, I would assume, last NBA season. It's huge for, again, that mentality of being able to go to these guys that are young, that are maybe going to get booed or maybe get jeered a little bit by the fans when things aren't going right, and say, this is how it is here, but it's not, it means they care. I'm sure people would disagree with me on that, but I have always said if that's the case, it's because the fans care, they're there and they're engaged. But yeah, it's got to be such a mental game for a kid like VJ Edgecombe, who's maybe 21,
yeah, if that.
Yeah, exactly. So just having guys like that to be able to coach, again, on and off the court, I think is great. Whether we needed to use multiple roster spots on guys like this, that's another argument entirely, but I don't think the presence hurts.
I don't know if you'll agree with this parallel I'm going to make, but when you brought up Kelly Oubre, is Kelly Oubre Jr. the Nick Castellanos of the Sixers?
Man, it's picking at a sore wound right now.
For sure. And I think you and I both, like, we have our love for Nick and what he has done here. And, it feels like Kelly's not afraid to go at people on the internet, and Nick's not afraid to go at certain beat writers in press conferences and stuff like that. But it just feels like when things are going great for Kelly, everyone loves him. He's the vibes guy. He's the most handsome athlete in Philly. Yeah. It's tsunami all day long. But when things are going bad, it's like, get this guy off my fucking team. Why is he on the court? And I feel like it's very similar with Nick, where it's like when Nick Castellanos is going good, it's like, oh, here comes, the Tom Brenneman memes and, Nick Castellanos who died today because he's going to hit a home run. And then when things are going bad, it's like, get this guy out of the lineup. He should be on the bench, cut him. Like, it feels like from a player perspective, not necessarily like personality perspective even, but just from the type of player they have that like volatile, like tipping of the scale for each team.
So the comparison I'll agree with in terms of the fact that, like you said, from a fan perspective, I actually would not consider them sort of the same, where Nick Castellanos had a lot of very good plays for the Phillies, had a lot of very good stints for the Phillies, things like that. But there was also very long stints where Nick Castellanos was, batting 170 or something like that. I think Kelly Oubre has a lot more potential to be, and proven somewhat, to be more consistent as, he's not the top guy on the team. He's not going to be, but he can fill those roles and be who is needed at the time. Like I said, I think a lot of Kelly's problems when he gets into it is when he's trying to do too much. So if he can fall into a role, I think he's fantastic. Whether the fans are always pleased with him, I kind of understand that, because there are nights when he's doing too much and he's forcing it, and it's hard to watch because you know he can be a lot better. And I think people have a similar opinion on Nick Castellanos, where it's like he's chasing low and outside every time, and if he would just not swing at that pitch, he could be such a contributor. So in that respect, I agree with you. Yeah.
For the following players, level of importance, and it's three young guys that I think a lot of people are maybe either unfamiliar with how talented and good they actually are or can be, or on the complete opposite, they're putting a lot of eggs in the baskets of a bunch of these guys. Jared McCain is player number one. What level of importance for this Sixer season to be considered a success would you say Jared McCain ranks, 1 through 10? What's his level of importance?
Ooh, 1 through 10. So if you're talking like, Joel Embiid being able to play, being a 10, we'll say, whatever. I think Jared McCain is 7 or 8 level on importance, because like I said, I think he has a potential to really make a run at being a very good 6-man in the NBA, assuming our first 7 guards don't get injured. But also in that respect, if they do, which we have experienced before, that is one hell of a talented guy to not even have in your starting lineup. It was a short stint last year, unfortunately, because of the injury, but the potential that you saw from him, that's not going to go away, I wouldn't imagine. I think people are a little worried because he did have now back-to-back injuries, though completely different body parts. I think he's massively important because, again, this is a team that you can see starting to shift the focus towards the youth and running through the young guys. And I think he is monumentally important to that, because he could be somebody that you associate with, like the Tyrese Maxeys, the future of this franchise sort of thing. So I think he's monumentally important.
Those damn 2.5-pound weights got him.
I know. They did real dirty with that. I was like, it's such a cool photo shoot for a great jersey, and you couldn't replace the weights, huh?
And then the very next day, it's announced he's injured, and that photo's out there.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's how it goes with this
exactly.
team. It's always got to be comedic in some way.
Next player, VJ Edgecombe, who I think, like you said, if people watched, summer league, preseason, exhibition games, even if you watched him in college, like you knew the type of player, VJ was. I think there's a lot of people that are still very unaware of how good VJ Edgecombe is, because even going into the draft, as soon as the Ace Bailey stuff started to come to light, I was like, okay, I'm out on that guy. Mm-hmm. Bring me VJ. And I was happy to be like, yes, sure. I was an Ace Bailey guy at first, but bring me VJ now. And I just love his energy. It's very Maxey McCain-esque, just kind of that young, full of life, and has that chip on his shoulder, coming from the Bahamas and everything. What do you say his level of importance is to the success of this team?
I say honestly equal. It's got to be up there as well with Jared McCain, and it's kind of a cop out to say the youth is the most important, but for different reasons, I think they are each extremely important. And again, it was time for this franchise not to pivot away from Joel Embiid, from Paul George. Obviously, if you could have those guys out there every night and know they would be out there every night, that's what you do. But it's just not the reality of the situation. And I think expecting that would be a fool's error of some sort. VJ Edgecombe, I obviously you want to wait to see him in real NBA action. We've only seen preseason and summer league, but for a kid that was just drafted a couple of months ago and is, like I said, I can't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry, 20 or 21. he looks wise beyond his years on the court. The decisions he's making in games, the passes he's making in games, it looks like he has a basketball IQ that not a lot of people his age are going to have. And I think it's going to make for a smooth transition into the NBA, much like Jared McCain had before he got hurt. When they come in with that IQ and just good fundamentals, like, obviously the dunks are fun. He tried to dunk on Mitchell Robinson like right away. And, that sort of energy of no fear, because how the game is going. You can see the floor really well. I just think he has a ton of potential. And obviously you don't pick a guy number 3 overall and don't have high expectations for him. So I think the expectations are very high, but I also think he has a very good chance of exceeding them. I think if you don't have some other rookie, this year that's going to take all the awards anyway, he would be up there for sure.
Yeah, and to make us both feel old, he's a very young 20. He just turned 20 in July.
I couldn't remember if he just turned 20 or just turned 21, but that, and you kind of touched on it, just his mentality. He did a really great story for the Players Tribune where he talked about where he comes from, and they talked to his coaches, and you can tell he is a guy that is going to understand Philadelphia's mentality. And he seems extremely grateful just to be playing, things like that. And again, that energy, I think, is really important when you have a team that experiences some mental ups and downs almost every season to a degree that other teams sometimes don't. So extremely important. And again, not only for this season, but for the future.
Yeah, July 30th, 2005 was when Fiche was
Oh,
born.
God. Just doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't.
He should be in kindergarten, shouldn't he?
It's crazy. Next player I have, Adem Bona, who I think very under the radar type of player for the casual Sixers fan. I think a lot of people wouldn't even necessarily view him as somebody who has an importance level, because I think a lot of people see, obviously, Joel Embiid, they see Andre Drummond on this roster still, and it's like, where's this guy going to factor into? I think this is the year that we see Adem Bona kind of start to blossom into the player that he was drafted to be. But what level of importance would you say he falls into, especially knowing, Embiid's not going to play, 40 some odd games this year. We're not going to see, excessive minutes of Andre Drummond, hopefully, in those games either. You want to see a good rotation between those two, but where do you kind of rank Adem Bona's importance level this year?
Well, I think you made an excellent point for me, which is Embiid is not going to play every single game. It's just not going to happen. He's not playing back-to-backs as it is, and I don't expect him. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not going to play when you have, a bunch of games in 1 week. It's about seeing how his knee responds to constant game action. I mean, I think the most encouraging thing we saw out of Joel Embiid, and then I'll get back to Adem Bona, was the fact that he was able to practice right after that preseason game. He played 19 minutes, was clearly down a notch on the speed and everything, but I think that's appropriate. But he's not, even at his healthiest, they're not sending him out there every night, which I think is the correct call for what it's worth. But that means you need a backup center that you can actually rely on. And last year, we tried a number of different things, whether it was Andre Drummond or whether it was Adem Bona or what. You need consistency when you know a guy is not going to play. When you know your center is not going to play every game. And I think that's what they have planned for Adem Bona. He is going to be, I think, the backup center or the starting center when Embiid can't play. I wouldn't be surprised. And now you're seeing some interesting things like in the last preseason games, starting him alongside Joel Embiid. I don't necessarily think they're going to start together very often, but seeing those overlaps of, having some big man lineups, which was an issue for the Sixers because Andre Drummond, he's not pulling, backup center weight, which is fine. I don't think he should ever be asked to. And I think that's what they have Adem Bona primed for at this point. So again, kind of just the three guys you mentioned, I think are completely pivotal to the success of this team. Again, because we're going into this year saying, all right, these two multi-all-stars we have, if they can play most of the games, fantastic, but we're planning for the worst, I think, in a way. So I think it's huge, and I think he has a really good opportunity to either grow under that pressure, but it is a big role. That it's going to be a really big role for him. So we have to see how it pans out. But he has the talent, he has size. He's not Joel Embiid. He's never going to go out and be Joel Embiid, but if he could be a steady backup that you don't have to rush Joel Embiid out there every night if he's a little sore or something like that, just let him sit. That's a monumental difference, because I think not running Joel into the ground, is going to be the difference maker this season.
And I'll throw one more player into the mix just because it's fun. Paul George.
Go for it.
Paul George.
So it's a weird one for me with Paul George. I think the Sixers would be more beneficial to not have him go down into ISO every time and things like that, because that's when I feel like it was starting to collapse and getting really stagnant. Now you have a young team with a couple of players that are really fast, with a lot of movement, things like that. We don't need to send Paul George down to try to James Harden his way into shots every possession. I'm obviously worried about his health because it's been a rough year. He's hyperextended the same knee twice. He's had a groin issue and now has had a surgery.
He also lost his love for podcasting at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where we would be without Podcast P, So I actually consider him, and maybe an unpopular opinion, less of a major factor. I think if you have him and he's shooting well and can, play out on a wing and just take some easy shots and sink them, that would be great. I think if you start running the offense through him, something has already gone wrong, to be honest with you. And he's still a fantastic player. I think, it's hard to come here on a big contract and then immediately get hurt and immediately have one of the worst, just awful seasons that you could ask for. So have to wait and see. But again, I think if you're relying on him to run the offense, something has already gone wrong.
100%. We brought up Nick Nurse.
Mm-hmm.
How critical of a year is this for Daryl Morey? Not even important, but just like, Harris Blitzer Entertainment go and make this new hire. And, we didn't see Daryl at all last year. Like, I think he may have just been in the crumble cookie shadows. How critical of a year is this for Daryl and his standing with the Sixers and being, the puzzle master that puts this thing together for Philadelphia and for this franchise?
I will say, I think this year I would put him in less of a hot seat almost than last year, because I think last year a lot of their issues came off of just not being built for the very real possibility of things going wrong with Joel Embiid and with Paul George, and obviously all the other things you can't predict, but you need to be built for those sorts of things to happen, especially when it is a recurring thing. This year, it seems like they've taken that approach a little bit better. Some fans will be happy about this. Some fans will be sad. I don't know that I would say he's in the hot seat this season, just because, like we said, it is such a weird season where it feels wrong to say low expectations, but it's almost no expectation. I'm not saying they can't fail. I think they can by playing just the way they did last year for some of it, where it was just completely dejected, get us to the end of the season. But if they could start showing, that push towards building around these younger guys and head in the right direction, which, the bar was set pretty low last year. I don't think, I think it would be extremely weird to take this season and say, well, this is your last shot, over any of the other last seasons. I would almost think last year would have been the more appropriate, like before you're like, okay, you have Paul George now, that was your building around Embiid. If this doesn't work, but I don't know how hot Daryl Morey's seat is. We never really get an indication much of that. But I would think it's critical for both of them to show the pivot in the franchise to an extent where you're not just saying, okay, well, we have to force through this window. We have to do something in this window. So I think it's a critical year just for the team in general, top to bottom, because it's about how it's being built now.
Here's a fun this or that for you. Do we get more appearances, like media-wise, from Daryl Morey or more 76ers All-Stars this year?
I'm going to say All-Stars because just based on last year and, recent history, I don't necessarily expect to. Depends what you consider an appearance. He pops on the radio every so often, things like that. But if you mean sitting at a table at a Sixers presser,
a full
I think
in-person showing of Daryl Morey.
Yeah, I think we're getting more All-Stars. I would love to see at least a couple because I think you have the potential with, again, Tyrese Maxey. First year All-Star is a lot to ask for, but I think you have a lot of talent on the team. And who knows if Paul George or I don't know can't remember what the game amount is off the top of my head, but you could have Paul George shoot the lights out this year and make it in, I personally am not expecting to see Daryl unless I couldn't even tell you the walls start caving in maybe.
We'll see Board Ape version of Daryl Morey before we actually see Daryl Morey at his.
Exactly. I was just gonna say I'm gonna almost just say I hope there's more 76ers All-Stars than Daryl Morey appearances because I think that would be a good thing. So.
I think the only one we can truly cement is the trade deadline.
Yeah.
That's the one appearance that is the over-under.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get more.
That's
All-Stars.
A good point. Yeah, I would like to see Tyrese Maxey back in I don't think there's any reason he can't be an All-Star if he stays healthy and again with
Jared
with
McCain
having a little bit more help
in the future.
Jared McCain, if he plays, I think even 80% as well as he did for that 20 or 30 games we saw him, has a real shot at it as well. So yeah, let's hope for that because I think you might not see Daryl again until the trade deadline, but. Who knows? Maybe he'll suddenly decide to pop out in front of cameras, but not holding my breath on that one.
Not at all. Here's the real pressing question that everyone this season is truly locked in on. Can the Sixers win the NBA Cup?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what's most important.
Banners fly forever, everyone.
I think it is their best chance at a trophy this year.
I genuinely think, as silly as some people view it, and I think you appreciate it a little more because you are a European soccer fan, I think them putting their early season chips in that basket is something they should do, where you don't know what the duration of the season is going to look like, obviously, as things go on, but with how early on in the season the NBA Cup is, and NBA fans are going to say what they want to say about it. I don't care. Put a trophy in our trophy case. At our age, we haven't seen an NBA title in our lifetimes. Mm-hmm. Go win something for this generation of Sixers fans to say hey, we witnessed something pretty cool. There's a trophy that we saw them win. I think they should put a lot of credence and a lot of attention into doing as well as they can in the NBA Cup because as silly as it seemed early on, especially because the Lakers won the very first one, and it's of course, LeBron won it. Mm-hmm. I think you started to see the players actually care about playing in that and the competition level last year, especially with the Final Four teams, it was elevated to a level that was really fun and really cool. And I think with guys who have that edge to them, like Tyrese Maxey, like Jared McCain, VJ Edgecombe, those are still guys that are vaguely removed from college and they know what, outside of Maxey because of his one season in college being cut short for the pandemic, like those guys know what March Madness is like, and they know what playing in those types of tournaments are like. And I think they would thrive if they're given a shot to go and compete for something like that.
Yeah, and I think the point you make about just winning something, a lot of the success that this team has had, the players on it, has been individual player success. You have Joel Embiid's MVP season. You have Tyrese Maxey becoming an all-star. You have all these things, but I think especially this year with the focus on how do we just build a sustainable competing basketball team, that's going to be the first taste of, not that they don't want to go out and win every game, but some sort of game with actual stakes to it other than the other 82 games. And I think just for the morale cause of it, I don't think it's going to say, okay, we could take the rest of the season off. We want a banner. We want a trophy. I think it can only be a positive thing. This doesn't feel like the type of group. I don't think anyone in the NBA is taking that title from the NBA Cup and saying, well, we did our job for the year. I think it can only be a good thing, other than the fact that, you play some tougher games probably. But again, I think in a year where you're not really a title contender, it's not really realistic unless things play out very differently than what anyone expects. Win what you can. After last year, I have to imagine the feeling is just all they want to do is win games. So I don't think there would be anything bad about, just really trying to go for it. And I think the teams do anyway. Again, unless they really think they're a title contender, so much so that they don't care. But the Sixers aren't in that boat, and I think they mentally know that. It seems like, I keep saying it feels like there's a shift, but the way the players talk, even Joel Embiid, like there is a lot of mentality changes that have seemed to occur over the slog of last year going into this season, where it's just like, you know what, we just need to play basketball and we want to win games, and you just got to go one game at a time, one tournament at a time. And I think that'll be the first time where they can really be like, all right, we're playing for something, in a season where you're just trying to put it together.
And you build on the fact, like you said, like go win something. This team hasn't gotten out of the second round in this era in the regular NBA playoffs.
It's really only individual successes, and they've been great, but
prove that you can win something together.
Exactly.
Well, and I think that will be such a mental hurdle for them too. Yes. Whether it's Joel, Tyrese, even Paul George to a degree, and it will give them kind of this sense of belief that hey, we can actually go and accomplish something as a team.
Exactly. The difference between actually doing something as a squad rather than just we had these two players that are having really great individual years or things like that. That can carry you quite far, but there's really nothing to show for this team right now other than individual successes. And I don't think they think it'll be the same as winning an NBA championship by any means. But again, it's just that idea of, okay, we can win something with this group. We can win basketball games. We can compete. We can elevate ourselves. And that's going to be the start of this. Because again, so much of it after last year has to be mental. It's got to be a lot of mental game after you go through what this team went through last year.
Yeah. I mean, you look at a team like Oklahoma City, they went to the final of the NBA Cup and then they go on to win the championship. Not saying the Sixers will do that, but who knows? If that motivates you, it's hey, we came this close to winning something. Let's go, now shift our focus there. And I think if the Sixers can say, hey, we won something, now we know we're capable of doing it. Let's see how that kind of carries us. And I mean, it would be really fucking sweet if they won the NBA Cup in the Allen Iverson jerseys too. Let's put it that way.
I mean, if you're gonna do it in style.
It would be perfect. But yeah, I think that should be on their, if they have a checklist of things they want to accomplish this year, go win the NBA Cup title.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think this is one of the years where that tournament is going to be something that you look at as one of your best possibilities to come away with something as a team, for sure.
Over under this year, 45.5 games for Joel Embiid.
All right, so 45 and a half. Try to think. So I think we have 16 back-to-backs this year, 16 or 17, some massive amount.
Which I think is the most in the NBA.
Yeah, it
remember
is.
correctly.
Yes, it is. I think there's a couple other teams that might have the same amount, if I'm remembering correctly, but it is the highest. So there's 17 games right there, taking him down. 45. That's a tough one. It's so up in the air. Like I said, I think the most encouraging thing has been the fact that he went through that preseason game and then was able to go back to practice, because that was the issue last year. Like, he would be fine for a game, but then the knee just could not hold up to it. Now, that was one preseason game for 20 minutes, not 3 to 4 NBA games in a week. I'm going to say under, and it's because I think I mentally am so broken from this experience that I just am like, if he could play half the games, I think that's how much more can you really ask for,
right,
in a guy that hasn't been able to play. A lot of Sixers fans are not happy about that. They're like, well, why can't he play every game? And it's like, that is realistically not going to happen again.
No.
He, even taking out the back-to-backs, he is not going to play in every single other game. I would be willing to put a whole lot of money that I don't have on that. And I don't think you want him to. I think his career, a lot of things have been off of him wanting to play and wanting to be out there and responding to the idea of, oh, he's lazy, oh, he's always hurt, oh, he doesn't play. He's got to protect his body, and I would rather have him for 40 games spread out over the year than the first 10 and then he's done. So I'm going to say under, but my goal is to see him play half.
Yeah,
so
and
just slightly.
I think
under.
too, protecting his body, but also protecting his mind. Like,
for sure.
And not saying he's like mentally weak, because that's the furthest thing that Joel Embiid is.
It's the opposite, I think.
But just knowing, like, even hearing him in that press conference after the preseason game, like, he feels like he's in such a better spot mentally than he has been since I don't even know when.
And not, not to presume I know anything about his mental status or anything like that, but that was the first, like you said, sort of hint of him even saying, I feel mentally better, or acknowledging his mental health, I think.
Especially after that long article, I think, from ESPN
that
came out.
Which I was going to say. And it's a really great article. And I think a lot of the times, and especially it's gotten worse with social media and online sports betting and things like that. Like, I think people have forgotten that these athletes are human. And that, yes, it's frustrating when your star player that you really wanted to see win championships and things like that is hurt all the time. I get that. As a fan, as somebody who writes about the team, I get it. But there's also a kid that came across the world hardly knowing English just to play basketball, suffers, an awful trauma of losing his brother. His family is still across the world. I think people disregard a lot of those things because, he makes a lot of money. He does. Money makes a lot of things easier, but it doesn't.
Became a dad himself.
Exactly. Becomes a father, now has his own family, and just the mental toll of, like, he wants to be out there playing. Like, it baffles me when people say he doesn't. Like, he has, if anything, probably done more damage than good because of how much he has always wanted to play, whether he's maybe not ready to or not physically. So I think hearing him say something like, I talking about getting therapy in that ESPN article, which is huge. You didn't hear that from guys even a couple of years ago. And now you have kids like Jared McCain coming into the league that have already been working with a sports psychologist or therapist for years. And not for nothing, but Jared McCain seems to be handling, I'm sure he's struggling with the fact that he's been injured twice since his rookie year. But I think that energy level is somewhat a testament to, like, these guys getting the emotional and mental support off the court as well. And I think it will help Joel be more realistic about it. Like, just even you saw it in the preseason, he was playing his game, but like a notch down because he's adapting to the situation that it's being called for. There's times that you watch him play in the past where he's diving for a loose ball in, a December game, and you're like, bud, there's a reason you don't see you don't
holding my breath, like
exactly. And there's a reason you don't see the other top players, especially big men, doing that, because it's like, I got to be here for the rest of the year. I think a lot of those things are mental, and if he is in a better spot, it's better for him as the human, which is more important, but it's also good for him as the player. I think it'll be massive for him as a player.
100%. And I think the biggest question, the 2025-2026 Sixers will finish with what record, and where does their season come to a close?
I think they will be about a 500 team. They won, I think, 24 last season was the final count, something like that. And even with how disastrous that was, there was more than a handful of games that were close and they could have eked out wins, a couple of them that they lost literally at the buzzer. So I think even if Joel can't play, even if Paul George can't play very often, I think they're set up a lot more for success. I say in the loosest terms, just less I think less catastrophic kind of stints of losses upon losses upon losses. And plus, I think the Eastern Conference being a little bit in shambles is going to help them as well. I think they'll be about a 500 team, and I fully expect that to be more than enough to be either one of the very last playoff spots, but definitely good enough for the play-in. I think 3 of 4 teams from the Eastern Conference last year in the play-in had 500 records or worse. I think that's probably where their season will end, wherever. I don't know that they can make it through the play-in, and if they make it into a playoff spot, I think whoever is playing them probably crushes them. But again, that's a prediction I'm making, 6 months out. And as we know with this team, pretty much anything can happen in that time. So we did our preseason prediction survey on Liberty Ballers last year, and we were so young and optimistic those days. And we went back to that, and I was like, remember when I thought they would have 50, 60 wins, whatever. Those are good days.
What one season does to a fan.
And that's the thing. Like, it's not like the seasons around that were terribly uplifting. It was just that last one was such a slog by the end. But yeah, I'm hoping for a 500 team, and I do think that'll be enough to get into the play-in or something. Whether they get past that, that's going to be a bit more of a stretch.
I have one more for you that just popped in my head that I didn't have written down, but I want you to put your Daryl Morey cap on.
Oh, no.
February rolls around. Trade deadline's looming. What is your most likely trade you see the Sixers making this season? Whether it be a massive one that kind of just, supplements something that they need, a minor type of trade. What's the one trade you could see this team making in February?
Ooh. That's another one. It's another one that's tough to make this far out, I think, again, with this team, just because their needs can shift so volatilely. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if, maybe if a Dembona isn't terribly working out as your full-time backup center, and you have a pretty crowded backcourt, you do have the ability to maybe move Quentin Grimes. He is only on that 1-year deal.
He would have to trade his no trade clause, though, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I believe so.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
That deal was so strange.
Yeah, it was that entire situation, I think.
So bad.
Yeah, you never know what's going on behind closed doors with this. I always try to tell people that everything you hear about discussions between a team and a player is coming from somewhere. It's either the agent leaking it, the player leaking it, the team leaking it. We don't actually really know what goes on behind closed doors with that. But yeah, I would think if anything, you're going to see something like that where maybe the backup center, because that's always been, I feel like, such an issue for this team where it's like, again, your main center is not going to play every game. So you really need a good depth there. So I would think maybe something with that, but it'll depend who else is out there at the time. Another thing I always tell fans is you can't trade for players that aren't available. I think Phillies fans especially will understand that because the last trade deadline, it was like, oh, well, we just got, Duran and Harrison Bader, which were both very good trades. But I think people always want for players that aren't actually there.
Stephen Kwan was not coming here.
Yeah. We all, we all want to trade, and we all want to get the call that they're just going to send LeBron to us for nothing or something,
right.
It's not.
Or like Trey Hendrickson is going to be suiting up for the Eagles. It's not that easy.
No, it's never that easy. But, in 4 months, who the hell knows what this team will need. But hopefully they're playing at least a little bit more fun ball to watch than last year. That's pretty much where my expectations are.
So Mike Scott famously tailgated with Sixers fans on a multitude of times. Shout out to the homie. Which 76ers player do you, Erin Grugan, past or present, do you want to tailgate in M-Lot?
Ooh, past or present? All right. So if we're doing past or present, I think for a tailgate, I gotta go with Barkley. I gotta go with Charles Barkley because he, as much as I wish there was maybe a little bit more analytical basketball coverage in the world, he still does crack me up, and I think he would be extremely fun in that setting. I would love to say, guys like AI or Dr. J, but they are so cool that I think I would hide. Not that Barkley isn't cool, but he feels a little bit more approachable. AI and Dr. J are like that level of Philadelphia royalty almost, where it's like, I think I would just become speechless.
Although I do think Dylan would cook up a masterful TGI Fridays menu for AI.
Oh, I guarantee you he would gourmet that up perfectly. He is an absolute master. It baffles me every time I'm out there. But so let's go with Charles Barkley for past, present players. They got a lot of fun. They got a lot of fun now. Like I said, it seems like they're having a lot more fun. But I'll go with Jared McCain. I'll go with Jared McCain for current, but that's a really tough one because there's a lot of guys that I would like to meet, but I'm like, who would be the most fun in that setting?
Right. And it's like,
because Charles Barkley, I think, would have fun out there with the fans too. He would be
watching every intricacy of like everything that goes on.
Oh, he would be living for it. And
he would be asking Dylan all the questions, like, can I get your recipes?
He'd be standing over him the whole time. Absolutely. Which I'm sure Dylan would be like, all right, you're cool, but back up from the grill.
And I'm like, if Dylan can handle, De Niro coming through, I think he can handle Barkley.
Yeah, there's always someone coming through. Always someone. You look up and you're like, oh, all right, so-and-so is at the tailgate now. All right.
And it will be caught on film by
Oh, of course. Always. From about 7 different cameras, only one of which is me, but, we have a lot of us out there.
Incredible. Erin, this was a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to having you on throughout the season. Let everybody know where they can follow you, check out everything you're doing with Liberty Ballers and everything else you got going on.
Yeah, you can find me on, I almost said Twitter, and I'll probably just say Twitter.
We say Twitter in this house.
Yeah. Come on now. At Erin Grugan, ERINGRUGAN. And at libertyballers.com, where we are covering every game, whether you are watching them or not. Yes, we covered every single game last year. Trust me. So anything you ever need Sixers wise, we got you covered over there. And I had a ton of fun. Can't wait to talk to you again. And hopefully we're talking about, some positive things going in Sixers basketball.
Lots of positives.
Yes.
Can't wait to do it again soon, but definitely check out everything Erin's got going on, and she'll be on the show throughout this Sixers season. Erin, look forward to the next one.
Me too.
Shout out to Erin for hopping on the show, and like I mentioned on Monday's show, Erin will be joining us, and you heard it in the interview as well, or the segment, I should say, not really an interview, but our sit down with Erin. She'll be on the show throughout Sixers season. Very excited to have Erin being part of the show for this NBA season, talking Sixers with me, talking Sixers with Harrison potentially on as well. And that is in addition to the boy Seamus Clancy and his appearances that will resume next week. Seamus was supposed to be on the show, had some things pop up, and we pushed it again, which is totally fine. But Seamus will be back because I teased on Monday that it was going to be me, Harrison, Erin, Seamus. Ended up being just me and Erin on this show. But Seamus will return next week's show. So pumped to have Seamus back on since it's been a hot minute since we've had him on. But he'll be back to making regular appearances as well on next week's episode. But the Sixers. The Sixers, this team. We just had our season preview. Recording this right after the game that happened on Wednesday night. They go into Boston and beat the Celtics 117-116. And guess what? That deserves a Victory Kenwood beer, the official beer partner of Underground Sports Philadelphia. It's a refreshing light beer, just 4.1% ABV, 120 calories, just 8 grams of carbs. You guys can go to kenwoodbeer.com, use the Kenny Finder to see who's got Kenwood beer on tap in the Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware, Pittsburgh, and Maryland areas. You can also find Kenwood beer at your local liquor stores in those markets. Again, visit kenwoodbeer.com, use the Kenny Finder, see who's got Kenwood beer on tap in your area. Must be 21 or older to do so. And as always, guys, please drink and celebrate responsibly. The Sixers do the damn thing against the Boston Celtics. Who could have thought? Who would have seen this coming? A season-opening win led by the two young stars on the court. Tyrese Maxey, 40 points in 41 minutes, 6 assists, 2 rebounds. Went nuclear from 3, 7 of 9 from beyond the arc. Edgecombe. Has the most points in an NBA debut since Wilt Chamberlain. The most points in a Sixers rookie debut in franchise history, surpassing Allen Iverson. 42 minutes for the number 3 overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft. 34 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Tyrese Maxey and Edgecombe combined for 74 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. And the Sixers, even in a down night performance from Joel Embiid, where he had 4 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists in 20 minutes, the Sixers found a way. They found a way. They were willed to victory by Tyrese Maxey and Edgecombe. Quentin Grimes had 10 points in this game. Kelly Oubre Jr. had 10 points in this game. The unsung hero of this game, outside of Tyrese and Dominic Barlow, steps up big time for this team. In 34 minutes of time played, with Paul George obviously being out, and comes in, plays a little bit of the center position as well, with Embiid struggling. 13 points from Dominic Barlow, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. That's big-time stuff right there. From a guy that you didn't really expect to see much of, but with Paul George being injured, Dominic Barlow stepped up in a big way. Edgecombe, a debut to remember. And mind you, Cooper Flagg didn't do all that much in his debut on Wednesday night. Ace Bailey had 2 points for the Utah Jazz in his debut. Did the Sixers win the draft again? Who's to say? Who's to say? What a debut. It was incredible. It was an incredible game. Celtics are still very good, even without Jason Tatum with the Achilles injury. They're still a very, very good team. And, you know, Jaylen Brown had 25. Derek White went off in this game, 25 points. Peyton Pritchard had 16 in this one. Nimi Asketa, apologies if I mispronounced that, 17 points in 25 minutes. 13 points from Anthony Simons. They're still very formidable. They're still a very good team. And the Sixers found a way. And they were led by their two, young guard superstars. And this is without Jared McCain. This is without Joel Embiid having his best performing night. This is without Paul George. And they went out there and willed their way to victory. And I think this is a great tone setter for the Sixers, simply because, as you heard when Erin and I were talking, like, this is almost a free play year. There's no expectations for this team because nobody knows what to expect from this team. And I think to have a win like that be the way you kickstart your season before you even play a game at home is a massive, massive victory for the Sixers, not just in game speak, but also in terms of just letting your fans know, hey, we're still going to be very competitive. We are still going to be a team that is going to make noise, this season. So while it's one of those things that you don't want to fully jump into the deep end again after one game, it gets you excited about what VJ Edgecombe is going to be able to do this year, what Tyrese Maxey's next level up is going to look like, what this team will look like with Jared McCain in the lineup, what this team will look like with Paul George in the lineup, what this team will look like when Joel Embiid is rocking and rolling. There's a lot to be optimistic about. Optimistic October extends to the Sixers. Who would have thunk? This is a very awesome game. I actually watched it. I have now watched one game. 33% of the games I watched last year I've watched. Which begs the question, am I going to go to the Sixers home opener? I was obviously at the Phillies home opener this year. I was at the Flyers home opener this year, just a week or so ago, a week and a half ago. Do I go on Saturday night to Xfinity Mobile Arena to take in the Philadelphia 76ers? And then do I go on Monday as well? Because hear me out, guys. I am off from my day job now until November 3rd. I do this every year. My birthday is next week. So I always take off and have a good lot of time off from there. So I don't have to worry about that mental exhaustion at that job. But with that being said, the Sixers play on Saturday at home. And I just got to convince CFO Margie for us to go together because it'd be cheaper that way right now than it would be to just buy one singular ticket. But Monday's game against the Orlando Magic is $9 for one ticket. For two tickets, it is $14. $12 for the cheapest. $14 is so that I can get a nice little credit back on my ticketing app of choice. No free ads. Do I go to two Sixers games in a row? Who am I? I'm really thinking about it, though, because I want to see VJ Edgecombe play in person. I want to see Tyrese Maxey play in person. I can't tell you the last time I was at a Sixers game. When was the last Sixers game I was at? Have I seen Tyrese Maxey play in person? I had to have. There's no way I haven't been to a Sixers game since Tyrese was drafted. I'm going to have to do some research. Because I know Matt and I obviously went in 2019 against the Raptors. I remember that game. But there had to have been a Sixers game I was at. There had to have been. And that I'm just not remembering. I had to have seen Tyrese Maxey. No. I can't believe I can't remember. I mean, that goes to show you the last time I was at a Sixers game. But I'm very much thinking about going on Saturday and Monday. So, maybe. We'll see. I think winning this game against the Celtics was a good surge for me to want to go and watch this team in person again. No, I definitely went to a game with Tyrese Maxey because I went with the boy, Corey Critelli. Definitely went to a game with Tyrese Maxey playing. Okay. I might have lost something with that. I didn't lose my mind. Okay, I do remember that now. But yeah, I'm really thinking about going to back-to-back Sixers games. In the year 2025, this guy right here, who has been scarred since 2021 about this team, I'm really thinking about going to back-to-back Sixers games. Because why not? But shout out to VJ Edgecombe. Most points in a debut since Wilt Chamberlain. That's crazy. VJ should have held up the 34 on the piece of paper. He should have pulled the Wilt there when he found out. That would have been hysterical. That would have been great. Last bit here. Shout out to the Sixers. Great win for them. Good vibes to start the year. Who would have thunk? And I think the happiness on Joel Embiid's face said it all when they were dousing VJ Edgecombe in water after the game. That was huge to kind of just see the happiness on Joel's face. So I was happy for Joel there. Last bit here, MLS talk. Philadelphia Union playoffs get underway on Sunday as well at 5:30 at Subaru Park. Union playoff talk here brought to you by our friends over at Bino. Guys, break out the Bino board at the Union tailgate. You're going to be the talk of the tailgate. Break it out at a party. Have it in your man cave, your she shed, whatever it may be. Bino's going to get the people going. It's paper football meets foosball for the next big tabletop flicking experience. Go shop Bino. Get your officially licensed Philadelphia Union Bino boards. And use our link in the description to do so that way Bino knows you're coming from us. And when you go to check out, use code BinoBennett62, and you'll get 10% off your next order from our friends at Bino. Again, use our link in the description at checkout. Use code BinoBennett62. You'll get 10% off your next order from our friends at Bino. Union playoffs are on the horizon, and we know who the Union will be playing now, and it is the Chicago Fire, who I said I think I would rather play them. They beat Orlando City 3-1 on Wednesday night. Kind of just had the lead and never surrendered it. And now it'll be the Philadelphia Union and Chicago Fire. Here's why I like this a lot, just in terms of the overall postseason. It's not that far of travel for the second game. Not that Orlando would have been either, but you're not playing in truly unpredictable weather when you're playing against Chicago now. You're playing in similar weather that Philadelphia is right now to a degree. and you're not having to deal with rain, you're not having to deal with, heat, whatever it may be. So I like that aspect, and it's not that far of travel. So like if Union fans wanted to go to Chicago, like they totally could. And I like this matchup. We've talked about this a couple episodes now. Back in August, the Union 4-0 over Chicago, and back in June, a 1-0 win at Chicago. So they've had their number to a degree this year. I like this matchup a lot. I think the Union can really take advantage of it. 5:30 at the Sub on Sunday. It's going to be rocking. And then game 2 of the series in Chicago is on Saturday, November 1st at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Get it done in Chicago. Win it in 2. Have that third game off and kind of have a bit more of rest to get off your feet, and then gear up for what is going to be an exciting overall postseason, and see who your opponent's going to be between New York City and Charlotte. But you don't want to overlook Chicago, obviously, but I think the Union have what it takes to put this away in 2. And I'm excited. I'm excited for this team. This is going to be a very fun run for them. The MLS Cup runs through Philadelphia. And, if the Union are able to advance to the MLS Cup, they'll be hosting it, which would be absolutely bonkers. And I would have to find a way to be in the building for that, no doubt about it. But, yeah, I'm pumped. Union playoffs on Sunday right after the Birds. It's going to be an exciting time. So let's root for this team. Let's support them the way that we all know that every Philly team deserves support. Let's support a team that's going to the postseason and competing for a title, the best team in their league, and see if they can get a little revenge from 2022, just like the Philadelphia Eagles did. It'd be kind of sweet. Long playoff run, too. Obviously starts end of October, and MLS Cup is in early December, so if they're going all the way, we got a couple months of Philadelphia Union soccer to gear up for, and I'm very excited to see what this team's going to be able to accomplish, because I think they have the pieces in place to get the job done. That is all I've got for you guys on this one. Make sure you are following us on the socials at Underground PHI across the board. We're on every social platform. Subscribe to the pod, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. Subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. Leave a like on the video, drop a comment in the comment section, click that bell icon so you know whenever new videos go live. Subscribe. And this show, guys, is proudly presented by the city of Vineland, and the Garden State Comic Fest is coming to the new Vineland Convention Center Saturday, November 15th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday, November 16th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Meet Melissa Joan Hart plus fan favorite stars like Dan Parent, the legendary Archie's comic artist and writer, Kevin Clash, the voice of Elmo, Splinter, and Baby Sinclair, and Keith Williams, the iconic comic book inker from Marvel, and more. Comics, cosplay, collectibles, and over 6,000 fans. Visit gscfvineland.com for all the details. Again, the Garden State Comic Fest is coming to the new Vineland Convention Center Saturday, November 15th and Sunday, November 16th. For all the details, visit gscfvineland.com. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast. And this has been episode number 788 of Underground Sports Philadelphia. Big shout out to Erin Grugan for hopping on the show this week. We'll have more appearances from her throughout the 2025-2026 Philadelphia 76ers season. Seamus Clancy back on the show next week. I'll be flying solo. Or I can maybe drag Pat Pitts in on Sunday. Who knows? We'll see how the boats are floating. But I'll be back regardless on the show on Monday to break down hopefully an Eagles big-time BTA win over the Giants. Talking more Sixers. I'll let you know if I'm at the Sixers home opener. I'll let you know if I'm going on Monday as well. We'll talk some Flyers on Monday's episode, as they went belt to ass themselves against the Seattle Kraken. They have another game tonight, so we'll recap both of those. on Monday's show, and hopefully we're talking about a Philadelphia Union win on Monday as well as they gear up for the playoffs, baby. Let's go. But until Monday's episode, I'm getting that cup out of here, and I'm signing off. Peace.